This first bit of advice really applies if you are at the absolute start of your learning to draw journey. So you may be past this already, but if not, it's simply draw. Draw, 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 and draw again. Don't rush to watch how to draw videos. Don't rush to read books. Don't rush to sign up to a course, but rather try to experience as much as possible about drawing by drawing. Now, I do believe that learning is important. I'm a trained teacher after all. But I think that when we're starting to learn to draw, it's helpful to find out what I think of as natural starting point is. Now, if I've been drawing for years, informally, randomly, I could easily have a sense of that already. But if I've been thinking about it for a long time and I've suddenly thought, I'm going to give it a go, I'm going to do something about it, then it's helpful, I think, to find out where that starting point is without any particular outside direction. We let it develop for a little while. We get to see what was within us, what our thinking can produce. It gives us a stronger, a clearer foundation on which to grow, on which to start to make choices about what am I trying to achieve and how am I trying to do it. All of those things, I think, are more straightforward and more effective to do if we have an understanding of our baseline. Second point is understand there is no right way to do anything when it comes to drawing. There is no right technique. There is no right method. So don't let yourself start to think in ways that sound something like, what's the way you draw a tree? What's the right way to draw an eye? How do you draw shadows? Because there are an uncountable number of ways to draw an eye, a tree, shadows. Now, we probably ask questions such as this because we want to draw something and we're struggling to know how to do it. What it's much more helpful to appreciate is that the right way for me to draw anything at all is to have a clear picture of how I want my finished drawing to look, because that picture of how I want it to look will guide me to the best way for me to create that drawing. Rather than asking, how do I draw trees, and rushing to find videos on how to draw trees, I'm better off just looking at trees, looking at as many different trees as I can under different circumstances, different lights, different distances, and think what marks on the paper will create the effect of that tree in my drawing. And I'll just slip in here that a lot of the problems we have with our drawing that we put down to inadequate drawing technique actually come from not having observed what I'm drawing as carefully as I need to in order to draw, which is a very different type of observation that I need for everyday life. This third point is one that you may need to remind yourself of a number of times in the months ahead, but that's trust your instincts. Trust that if you've wanted to draw enough in the past to get to this stage, that you have something in you that's worth the effort and the time of at least giving the chance to get out and develop. Learning any skill, and that's what learning to draw is, it's learning a skill. Learning any skill requires perseverance and consistency, and at times at least, a lot of hard work. And at those times, if we're not going to give up, it's helpful to be able to remind ourselves, I really want to do this. I have it in me. This next point, I think, is important because it's not always so obvious. And that's, don't think that learning to draw is simply learning a list of various drawing techniques and skills, things that we need to learn to do when we're holding a pencil or a pen or a brush in our hand. Now, there are technical skills to learn and we'll need to learn them. But once you've progressed a little way in learning these technical skills, you'll soon realize that actually the hard thing isn't drawing the straight line or the curved line or understanding how two-point perspective works with a box on a flat plane, but that the hardest part of drawing is knowing what lines or marks I need to draw, knowing where I need to draw them, knowing how I need to draw them, knowing when I need to draw them. This is why it's so much easier to copy someone else's drawing, because I don't need to work out any of these questions. I just copy the answers they've worked out when they drew it originally. But if I want to be able to draw my own drawings, then I have to learn to answer these questions. And in my experience, it's spending time understanding the why am I drawing this, which has been crucial for setting me up to understand the where, when, how, and what. Why am I going to put these marks on the paper? What effect, what visual effect do I want to have on the paper with these marks? If I can visualize how it's going to look on the paper, all the better. Because once I know why, once I know what I'm hoping is going to be created, that will guide me as to what sort of mark I'm going to put, how I'm going to put it, when in the overall drawing I'm going to put it, where I'm going to put it, and so forth. It's the big picture understanding that actually guides these step-by-step decisions that can seem so overwhelming. And again, there is no one way to create any effect. There are different ways. So the question becomes, what's going to be the best way for me to create the scene in my mind that I can picture on the paper, the effect I'm hoping to create? And now I can start to rummage around through my experience of drawing with different types of marks and understanding and remembering different effects they've created to create what I want here in this drawing. And of course, as we grow in experience in this, a lot of things become second nature that at the start are quite conscious and maybe time-consuming and even challenging decisions to make. Because over time, we settle on what choices we're going to make. We're happy with the results, and so we consistently start to make the same sorts of choices for the same sort of end result, which doesn't just make it easier and faster, but it also means we start to develop a recognizable drawing style, because how our drawings look come from all of these small choices that we make with every mark we put on the paper. This next point is a way I think when you're just starting to learn to draw, it is actually a helpful way to go beyond simply what I can produce myself. And that's not to look at how to draw videos and books and courses, but simply to look at drawings, to find drawings of the sorts of drawings, the sorts of subjects, using the sorts of materials that you'd like to be doing, and find ones that really resonate with you. But in the end, not so much, wow, this is an impressive drawing, but resonate in the way of, this is the sort of thing I feel like I've got in me. This is the sort of thing I've been imagining in some, even if it's in some vague sort of way, that my drawings are going to look. These are the sorts of marks I'd like to be putting together. And I don't mean just one or two drawings, but find as many drawings from these artists as you can that are relevant to what you're hoping to draw, and really study them. Again, this is where trust your instincts. Don't think that you're not capable of looking at these drawings and working out what's making them work so well, in my opinion. How are the marks being used? What sort of marks are there to create the effects that they're creating? How do they create something that really feels like a tree or really looks like a horse? But as a beginner, study these drawings, but don't make the mistake of copying these drawings, because that will not lead you in the development of your drawing in the way that you think. The skills that we need and learn in copying are not the same skills we need to create our own drawings, which really is an application of what we covered in the previous point. So instead of copying, seek to understand what they've done and how they've done it, and then be thinking, now how can I use this way of thinking, this way of translating an object into marks on the paper in my drawings? And then I can start to apply that understanding into my drawings when I draw, not copying their drawings, but instead engaging and developing and training my own creative thinking and then channeling that through my arm and my hand into my pen on the paper. And this point is a bit of a warning in some ways, and normally I'm more for energy and enthusiasm, but when we learn a skill, it's easy to run ahead too fast, too quickly for our own good. And in drawing over and over again, I see people who have been developing bad habits, bad drawing habits, that in essence are because they're trying to draw subjects that simply are way beyond their experience and their ability, their understanding, their skills at that point. It's not that they won't be able to draw those subjects, but they've perhaps been a little impatient to get there. If you've ever learnt to juggle, you probably did it by throwing one ball up in the air and catching it, and then switching to one ball in each hand with an alternate rhythm, and learnt to become very comfortable and predictably controlled with that before a third ball was thrown in to complicate the mix. We don't learn to juggle starting with 5 fully operational chainsaws all at once, but I so often see the drawing equivalent of that. But doing this has 2 big problems. The first is that we get discouraged because we can see that our drawings aren't that good, and we think that we're just not capable of drawing them, rather than understanding that our method was simply too fast-tracked. Or the opposite, we think they look great because we don't know enough to realize that they're not actually looking so good to other people. And if we persevere doing drawings that we think are okay when they're not, we're going to make it very harder further down the track to actually see accurately enough what we're doing to then make the changes that need to be made to bring things into a greater degree of accuracy or realism or whatever it is we're really wanting to achieve. Whatever I want to learn to draw, whatever subjects, whatever materials, in whatever style, I will learn more quickly, more effectively by drawing simpler examples of those subjects under relatively simple visual conditions and on a smaller scale. There's no point doing a 3-hour drawing on a very large sheet of paper if I'm not getting it right. Better off doing small drawings on small sheets of paper where I can see what I'm producing, learn from my mistakes, correct my mistakes in a faster, easier cycle of learning. And there's huge advantages in keeping what I draw to a size and level of complexity so that I can finish it in the one drawing session. Drawing has a natural rhythm from start to finish, and understanding and learning to use that rhythm is very important, which doesn't happen if I have a big gap in between starting and finishing a drawing. There are also skills that I only learn in the second half of a drawing, and if I don't often finish my drawings, then my development of those second half skills won't end up being on the same level as the skills I develop in starting a drawing. And can I add, in my experience, the second half of the drawing session is a lot more fun, much more satisfying than the first half, which makes it even more of a shame to miss. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. If you're learning to draw, congratulations. I hope some of these points at least will ring true and might help position you for a productive and satisfying start to your drawing journey. But I've saved the best till last, and it's last in all of my videos. And that's whatever you draw, however you draw it, whatever method or process or guides you choose on your drawing journey, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.